One of my favorite filmmakers and storytellers, and Ava DuVernay, is back with her brand new film by the name of Origins. This biographical drama is an adaptation of Isabel Wilkerson's bestseller, Caste. And in today's video, I'll be sharing with you all if I believe the film really stuck this landing in its messaging, but more importantly, I'll let you all know if I believe this film is worth checking out. We'll be discussing that and much more in today's review. But first, let's start the conversation in the comments below. Let me know, number one, if you were familiar with the book that this film is based upon. And if you have read the book, let me know the comparisons and the differences between the film and the book. But also, were you familiar with the subject matter in which the book and the film covers, which is the caste system? But also, share your thoughts on the film. Once you've seen this movie, let me know what worked, what didn't work for you, and let's have those conversations in the comments below. So to answer my own question, if I was familiar with the book or the subject matter, number one, I haven't heard of the book and I haven't read the book, but you best believe after watching this film, I will be doing my research and reading that book sometime sooner rather than later. But then the second part of that question, if I was familiar with the subject matter, which is the caste system. Now, I'll be honest, when I was in college, which was over 10 years ago, I had a history course and it wasn't like the topic at hand, but we had a conversation around the caste system. And in all honesty, it wasn't super extensive, nor was it a detailed explanation of the caste system. And then personally, putting some blame on myself, I didn't do more research after learning about the caste system. So a lot of the foundational stuff within the subject matter was mostly new to me in this film. And on purpose, I knew that Ava was making a new film, who was involved with it, but I didn't know anything about the plot. I didn't watch a trailer or a teaser, so I went into this pretty blind. But for those that are like, well, what is Origin? What is it about? Let me give you a little idea of exactly what this film is tackling. Grappling with tremendous personal tragedy, writer Isabel Wilkerson sets herself on a path of global investigation and discovery as she writes Caste, the Origins of Our Discontents. Now, Caste is a fixed social group into which an individual is born within a particular system of social stratification and hold a ritual status observed within hierarchy and interact with others based on cultural notions of exclusion. Which basically in layman terms means that there are people that think that they're better than others. So now getting into the nitty gritty of this review, let's talk about the writer and director of this film, Ava DuVernay, who to me, I believe is one of the most important voices in Hollywood. From Selma to When They See Us to the 13th till now, her passion and determination and dedication to telling human stories in the face of adversity and posing the important questions of the value of life and treating others with kindness and compassion is fully on display in this film. To me, I felt she did a really solid job of explaining and educating, but also reminding us as the audience of our role and responsibilities as humans to stand up against prejudice and systematic discrimination and oppressions that is so deeply rooted in our society. A quick story, this isn't meant to be a flex or anything, just a story I want to share with you all, but after I saw the film, I had posted like my initial reaction, and I tagged Ava DuVernay because I follow her, I love her as a director, as a storyteller, she just seems like such a beautiful human being, so I tagged her in my comments, and I want to repeat what I sent to her, and she did reply, and I won't get into all that stuff again, I'm not flexing, but as I told her, I want to say the same thing to you all as I said to her on camera, and that was, I want to thank Ava DuVernay for being such an inspirational and thought-provoking storyteller. To me, she is truly one of one in my eyes, and I'm so thankful to be able to witness her excellence. Thank you, Ava DuVernay, for all the work you have done within the film industry and outside of the film industry. She is just, like I said, a one-of-one, and I thought she did a really good job of putting the pieces to this puzzle together, and I'll get to some of my criticisms with the handling of it, but for the most part, I thought she was phenomenal as far as the direction goes. Now, to guide you on this very important and heavy subject and journey into discovering the root of this system, you need someone who can play this role with integrity and honesty, and in this role, Ava chose to go with a phenomenal actor by the name of Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor. From the first time I saw her in films such as In Too Deep or Undercover Brother, to being an absolute scene stealer in one of my favorite shows in Lovecraft Country, and so many other projects, she just knows how to capture your attention and your emotions in such a compelling way. As she plays real-life award-winning writer Isabel Wilkerson, she brings so much to the role. She does it in such a beautiful way. It's so subtle, but it's also so much nuance in her performance. Now, as I'm recording this video, we're not too far away from from the Oscar nominations. And shout out to Emma Stone, Lily Gladstone, Carey Mulligan, so many great performances from the lead females from last year's films. But I personally think it will be a felony. It will be a criminal offense if we don't see Aunjanue on that nomination, because she is just brilliant in this film. No spoilers, but that phone scene alone brought me to tears. But I want to give just as much praise to this incredible all-star cast of wonderful performances, whether you have legends such as Emily Yancey, Jasmine Thesis-Jones, Blair Underwood, so many great actors. But this journey that Isabel goes on, there are 3 pivotal characters in her life that were just so important to this narrative, to her story, that I want to put a little spotlight on, starting off with just the beautiful chemistry that we see between Aunjanue and Jon Bernthal was fantastic. The scene that Aunjanue has with Audra McDonald was incredible, and Niecy Nash as her cousin slash sister, that chemistry, that story, and how it kind of ties into the main narrative was absolutely beautiful. Now, I could spend a lot of time unpacking or attempting to unpack this caste system and how Isabel draws conclusions and connections to how the inhumane atrocities of the Holocaust are tied to the unspeakable evils of slavery, and how that connects to the Indians and their treatment towards people that they call the untouchables. But I don't want to give away all the answers and the reveals to you all, and if indeed there are any connections between those things, but I really thought the way Ava told the story was fascinating and very interesting. And I'll be honest with you all, this isn't an easy watch. This is a heavy film. Like, this is meant to make you feel uncomfortable. This is meant to educate those that are uneducated in this subject. And it's some imagery that's just in my head. I'm just like, this is a lot to take in, but I appreciate those moments that the film had to offer and what it had to say in its messaging, and also kind of bringing that into the look of the film. Like, this is a gorgeous, well-made film. The sound design, the editing was great, but the cinematography, there's this timelessness to the film that we can feel like we're in the 1930s or we're in the current times in late 2000s. Like, it is a gorgeous looking film. Now, before getting into some of my criticisms, I do want to share with you all, without context or spoilers, some of my favorite scenes that really move me to my core. There's a moment in the film in which we see Isabel interviewing people and their experiences with Caste, and the examples being, there's a story involving Miss and her school that I thought was just so great. The scene that she has with McDonald is incredible. There's flashbacks that are used in this film showing this black and white couple working together and creating Deep South. There's moments where we see a Jewish couple and their story, seeing children being taken away from their families. And also me not knowing the Indian connections to this caste system in regards to the untouchable stories and how it tied into Dr. Martin Luther King in an Ebony magazine was just so fascinating to me. There's a scene where there's slaves on a boat that was captured in such a powerful way, and it was just so devastating. Now, those scenes moved me. They got me to my core. They got me emotional. But there is a scene in this film that really got to me and just spoke to me. There is an interview that Isabel holds with an 82-year-old man who recalls the story of his experience with Caste, and it involves him and his all-white baseball team with the exception of one black boy on his team, and they go to celebrate after winning this game. They go to a pool, and again, I don't want to give too much away, but that whole scene brought me to tears, man, because I just have a compassion for children and such an innocent young age. They don't mean no harm to no one, and that scene was just beautiful in every way imaginable. And then I didn't even bring up, there's a scene, I talked about it briefly earlier, involving a goodbye over the phone that literally, I was in tears, y'all. Like, this movie really moved me emotionally. It's thought-provoking, has all those adjectives I can think of. But at the same time, listen, the film isn't perfect. I do have my criticisms that I want to get into here, my issues with the film. Starting off with, to me, there is a repetitiveness to the story at points where we see our lead character who's continuously having to explain her thesis, and I personally wanted more time with her interviewing those different people and their experiences and their story versus Isabel going from telling her cousin the story, which again, they're meaningful scenes, but it felt like we were doing the same thing. Let me tell my PR and my managing team about the story. Let me tell this person what it is. It just felt like it was repetitive at points, and I just wish that time was spent on, again, having conversations with those people that has experienced Caste. Which leads me into my other criticism, which is some of the points being made felt somewhat surface level in its approach and its delivery. I felt the actual writing of the book should have been more of the focus of this film. Instead, we get these forms of montages of her finding and structuring these pillars of what Caste means to her, and I just wanted the book to be more of an emphasis on, let's see the impact that the book had, because again, without giving too much away, but the story takes place, like her moment of like, okay, I need to find and discover this story of Cass is all started because of Trayvon Martin. And then when the book comes out, I believe, 2 weeks or 2 months, 2 days, it was within a short window of a time when the book release was the killing of George Floyd. So I just wish that the film would have maybe spent a little bit more time on the impact that the book had on the people that agree with her thesis, people that don't agree. I just wish it was more of a focus on that element of the impact of the thesis. As I said, I have avoided the trailers. I didn't read any reviews, but I have a feeling that we might share a similar opinion in this, or at least this question might come up when people see this film. Could this story could have been told in a longer format, whether that is a documentary or a miniseries? That is something that I feel very passionate about, because I feel as though, especially knowing that she's done a doc and she's done When They See Us in a miniseries in a 6-8 episode format, I believe this story could have benefited from that format. Now, I believe this is a compliment to say that I was so enthralled by this story and this thesis that I wanted more. But to be fair, there's a book out there, there's research that I can do to get more. But then on the flip side of that, there are scenes in this film and there's moments in this film that I wish were explored more. Like, there's a moment, a little scene in this movie where we have Isabel talking to her cousin about layman terms, explaining to someone that might not be as educated to the caste system. And that scene there kind of summarizes how I felt the film handles the subject matter, and which is, again, I don't mean this to be degrading the story, but I sometimes feel like it was very surface level, matter of fact, kind of rushing through some of the more elements that I wish were elaborated on more, spent more time with, exploring more of those themes. And listen, I get the argument that you don't need, as an audience, we don't always need the answers. We don't need to be, spoon-fed answers, but at the same time, I feel like, especially a story like this, I'm kind of torn on this, on the format, because I feel like it's the film's job to fully establish and fully realize and develop the thesis, the themes, the conversations, and really dive into the minutia of it all. And I feel like the film could have really benefited from being told in a longer format, because again, I do think the film does a good job of bringing things to light, bringing attention and educating those that aren't too familiar with the subject matter. But in a format of 2 hours and 20 minutes, I felt as though, whether it is a doc like The 13th or When They See Us in a miniseries, we could have spent more time of really diving into those things, like especially the pillars of Caste. But then bringing that same spending time on certain things to the film element of this film, and also the personal story of Isabel, where we see the situation with her husband, her mother, and her cousin, or expanding on the connections she's making to her personal relationship to Caste, or moments in the film where she's experiencing Caste in real time. I'll just say this, Nick Offerman, again, great actor. There's a scene where she's having issues with her mother's house and there's a plumbing issue, and the guy, Nick Offerman, is a plumber. He's clearly showing some signs of racism, or again, caste. And the film handles that scene, and there's a couple other examples where it feels like it was almost too heavy-handed. It didn't feel like it was executed as well as certain other examples were made in this film. So again, if it was more time spent, a scene like that could have benefited from that. So in conclusion, I'm not 100% sure that the narrative told in this film was as effective as it would have been in, let's say, a documentary or a miniseries that I personally think we could have fleshed things out a little bit more. But those are my main pros, those are my criticisms before I give you all my overall score and let you know if I think this film is worth checking out. I want to take this time to thank you all for making it to this point in the video. It means the world to me. If you're having a good time, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up, consider sharing this video, but also sharing your thoughts on this film in the comments below, and also consider subscribing to the channel. Overall, there's a lot to digest with this film, Origin, but it is undoubtedly extremely ambitious, incredibly moving, and powerful and profound. The performances by the entire ensemble cast felt real, and you felt the actors took pride in telling the story. Ava DuVernay, to me, continues to be an important voice that I will continue to listen to, and beyond impressed by her work, even if there's some criticisms that I have in her ultimate delivery. Aunjanue Ellis is absolutely brilliant and deserves all the praise in her performance. Even though I wish there was more time to fully dive into the story and maybe preferred a different medium, I still feel as though that people need to see this film because it is the personification of a conversation starter. I'm going to give Origins a 4 out of 5. Now, I want to end this video with this beautiful metaphor that is in this film. I'm just going to kind of summarize it, but it involves Isabella's mother's house. And the way they use the house, without giving too much away, is the notion of people saying, well, I wasn't there when this happened or that happened, but in today, we live in a house, which we call Earth, and how there are several cracks in society. Even though they were here long before us and might even be here after we're gone, will we allow those cracks to grow or will we fix it? I love that metaphor. I love that analogy. Again, I kind of butchered it, but when you see the film, you'll understand what I'm getting at. But again, even with the shortcomings, even though I feel like it could have benefited from a longer format, I was moved by this film. I was emotionally moved. I was thinking while I was watching it. Again, I'm going to do some more research. I will be reading this book. So I think those are great things to be said about a film, right? So again, that's why I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. And ultimately, I recommend you all watch this. Like, I personally feel, and I'm not trying to push anything or, tell you all how to spend your time, but I feel like you should see this in theaters because it is a conversation starter, whether you agree or disagree with the thesis. But also, I personally feel that this is one of those films that should be shown to schools, middle school, high school, college, because it has that type of feel to it. So 4 out of 5 for me, but hey, I've been talking for quite a while. I know this is probably a little bit of a longer review than I'm normally doing on this channel, but there's certain films, certain subject matters that I just want to talk about, and I'm happy I was able to do that with you all today. So with all that being said, it's now your turn to share your thoughts on this film, on the subject matter. Again, if you've read the book, because again, I haven't quite yet, let me know the differences, the comparisons and whatnot, and having those conversations in the comments below. Thank you all again for watching today's review. Hope you're staying safe. You all are awesome. If you had a good time, consider subscribing to the channel, checking out my playlist of some of my most recent reviews. Check out my most recent review, and I'll catch you all on the next video.
Yeah.